Begin the current Daf Masech the Shabbos Daf Mem. We begin 4 lines down at the top of the Amud. We continue the discussion from the previous Daf regarding Rechitza on Shabbos, which is from the more complicated sugyas in how it's written regarding to what the actual practice is today. Our shiur is co-sponsored by Kalzrich and Yecheskel, Torah Anytime, Daf Achaim, and we appreciate everyone joining us on Zoom. Some of the things we're going to be speaking about today's Daf is, we mentioned in the previous Daf, that Chamen Shehuchmu Me'erev Shabbos, regarding water that was heated even from before Shabbos, still there's an Isser. In Rechitza, you're not allowed to bathe on Shabbos. We're going to discuss exactly the parameters, what then is allowed to be done. Talmudic times, it was almost like a given that you had to be able to bathe with warm water. What could you then do on Shabbos if you cannot bathe with even water that was heated from before Shabbos? This we're going to be discussing related halachas regarding warming your body near a fire when you are wet, regarding are you allowed to do that, and how about the reverse? Additionally, related regarding cooking or warming oil on Shabbos, the difference between bathing your entire body versus washing limb by limb. Additionally, we're going to be discussing what actually started off this whole prohibition, what's actually problematic. Why can't you bathe in hot water on Shabbos? What type of violation, what type of malacha are you doing by doing that? Which we discussed regarding Gezeres Habalon, and the concern was actually because the bathhouse attendants, actually they needed a good hot pool, and therefore they actually started heating up the water on Shabbos, and that's where the Gezerah V'chitza started. Some of the words and phrases we're going to be speaking about in today's daf is Yad Seled this boy. The common wording known as the Isser of Bishul, which is when the hand recoils when you touch it. It's that hot, that's what's considered the boiling point, which is also Kreisishal Nichvis boy, which is, since some people are more sensitive than others, what's exactly the parameter? So when the stomach of a child gets singed, gets burned by that, that's the halacha of the boiling point. Additionally, regarding the Issa of Mahar B'divrei Torah, it's usher for a person to think in Torah in a bathroom or bathhouse, but under certain circumstances, it's going to be permitted, as we'll discuss in today's daf. So we begin 4 lines down at the top of the Amud, which we had many different opinions, and I felt like as we were giving the daf, as if like it was a little bit complex how to read the words, and also regarding what's the actual practice. However, one opinion that we came out with from the previous daf was that Chametz shehuchmu be'erev Shabbos, water that was heated even from before Shabbos, on Shabbos, you cannot go in and bathe on Shabbos. And we'll see today's daf why that is, where did that come from, but that's the halacha. Now, Itmar, so we learned following Machlokes Amarabim, so then what are you allowed to do on Shabbos? Is there any part of washing yourself with hot water that is permitted? So, Chametz shehuchmu be'erev Shabbos. So again, we're talking about if it was heat on Shabbos, then that's called Maisa Shabbos. That's forbidden to have benefit from something that a malacha was done for it on Shabbos. We're talking about the water was heated from before Shabbos. What could you do? So Rav Amay says that Lamacher, the following day, Reichitz ben kol gufay, you could wash your whole body, but aver, one limb at a time. You can't go into the bath and wash yourself, but you could go and wash it limb by limb. That's Rav. Shmuel Amay says no, lo hitiru lirchat, no, you're not allowed to wash your body, elapanam yodav raglav, your face, your hands, and your feet. That's all. That's machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Now, the Gemara has many different questions it's going to ask on the opinion of Rab, who holds, you could wash your whole body, as long as you do it limb by limb. Meisvei. First is from the Brisa that we mentioned in the previous daf. The Brisa says, Chametz shehuchmu be'erev Shabbos, regarding water that was heated from before Shabbos, so lamacher roichetz ben panav yodav raglav. It says clearly, like Shmuel, the next day, you could wash your face, your hands, and your feet, but not your whole body. Says the Gemara, to Yufta the Rab, that's a refutation of Rab, that you see clearly that you can't wash your whole body. He says, no, what's the Brisa telling us? You can't wash your whole body at one time, but you could wash it limb by limb. You could wash your whole body, just it can't be all at the same time. Says the Gemara, but how could you say that? But it says, only your hands, your face, and your feet, which is clearly like Shmuel. No, it says Rav, it means Kain Panav Yodav Raglav. It means like the face, the hands, and the feet, which are distinct limbs that you're washing each one by themselves. That's how you let it wash your whole body, aver. But it doesn't mean only your hands, your face, and your feet. It means just like that, and therefore that's not a refutation of Rav. So the Gemara says, okay, Tashma tried to bring another raya, not like Rav. The Brisa says, No, they didn't let you wash your body with warm water, even that was heated from before Shabbos. Only your face, your hands, and your feet. You see, like Shmuel, not like Rab. Says I'm here also. It means like the face, the hands, and the feet, which are separate limbs. If you're washing each limb of your body separately, then it's still going to be able to be permitted like Rab. So the Gemara says, okay, Tani Kava say to Shmuel. We have a brayso that says like Shmuel, which first I'm explain why we're switching from Tiyuf to the Rab to supporting Shmuel, which is essentially the same thing. But it says the Gemara, we have a brayso that says like Shmuel. This is actually the halacha l'maisa. Chamen shehuchmu me'erev Shabbos. If you have hot water that was heated from before Shabbos, l'macher roichetz ben panav yadav raglim. So the next day, you could wash your face, your hands, and your feet. Avoloi kol gufay aver. Clearly like Shmuel, not like Rab. You can't wash your whole body, even limb by limb. And so okay, that already refuted Rab. That's like Shmuel. And the in the you don't have to say that it's also going to be forbidden. Even if it's on Yom Tiv, where you're allowed to cook, but it was hot water that was heated on Yom Tiv, which you're not allowed to do rechitza on Yom Tiv. So it's heated on Yom Tiv, then for sure it's going to be usher to go ahead and wash your whole body. That clearly says like Shmuel, not like Rav. Now, that's one version, however, that we had of the Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Rabbi Masna Lahoshmaita the Rab, he taught the teaching of Rab, which you see here on the bottom half of this box. Bahai Lishna, he taught Rab's opinion slightly different. Chamen shochma me'erev Shabbos, water that was heated from before Shabbos, lamacha the following day, Omer Rab, what does Rab say? Reichetz ben kol gufay. You could wash your whole body together at one time. Rather, umishayu ever echad. It sounds like the word sounds similar, but it's a very different halacha. The first version was saying you could wash your whole body ever, one limb at a time. This version is saying you could wash your whole body at one time, and you just leave over one limb that you're not washing. So you're taking the bath, but you leave out your hand, and you're not bathing the hand or whichever limb it is. Then says Rav, as long as you're not doing the whole body, then it's going to be valid. But in that, Eisvei Kolhani Tiyufta. Now, according to the second version, so they asked all the questions we had mentioned in the first version. Now, here, unlike the first version, you can't answer, it doesn't mean only Panav Yad Raglav, means Ke'ain Panav Yad Raglav, because this second version of Rav is saying you're washing your whole body together at one time besides one limb. What does it mean like the face and the hands and the feet? That's only if you're saying you're washing limb by limb, which is like that face and the hands and the feet, which is one limb at a time. But this version is saying you can wash the whole body. That you'd see clearly not like that, and therefore to Yuftas, that's a clearly refutation of the second version of Rav, that no, you cannot wash your whole body at one time. You could only wash it at the most, limb by limb, but no, as the Gemara ultimately concludes, is the face and only the hands and the feet could you wash with the warm water from yesterday. Now, on this halachic the dispute of Rav and Shmuel, Amli Rabbi Yisrael L'Abai. So Rabbi Yisrael said to Abai, because Abai grew up in the house of Rabbi Bar Nachmani. We always find that in the Gemara, it says, Mar, the master. Abai says, who's the master? That refers to Rabbah, who was Rabbi Bar Nachmani. He was the Rosh Hashiva, as we learned in the last daf in Masechtas Brachas, which he was the Rosh Hashiva before Rabbi Yosef, and then Rabbah passed away. And then Rabbi Yosef would always ask Abaya, who saw he lived by Rabbah, who was the Rosh Hashiva before him. He asked him, what did he do? What did he do? He was always asking the Ma'aser Rav, that what did Rabbah do? So Rabbi Yosef asked Abaya, he says, Rabbah, Miko Ovid Kishmaite de Rav, did he follow Rav in this teaching, in this dispute between Rav and Shmuel, to go ahead and permit the lenient interpretation of Rav regarding bathing on Shabbos? So Malay Liyadan, it says, I didn't know everything Rabbah did. It says, no, I don't know. So on that, asked the Gemara, wait a second, Maiti Bailey, what was Rabbi Yosef's question? Obviously, that Rabbah didn't do like Rav in this halachic area, because the Taisa, we already said Rav was refuted. How could he have followed Rav in this teaching to bathe with warm water was heated from before Shabbos, limb by limb, or the whole body at one time besides one limb? So the Gemara, Dimalish Mele. Maybe Rabbah didn't hear this refutation. That's why Rabbi Yosef was questioning regarding Rabbah's custom. Maybe he did like Rav, because not everyone knows a brisa. Maybe he didn't know that the opinion of Rav was refuted. Says the Gemara. So then the Gemara says, wait a second. So then what's his doubt? If he was entertaining to say, and that's why some Gersos take out the word Dilma, because it's no, Loishmili, he didn't hear the refutation. So if he Loishmili, so if he didn't hear this refutation, then why was Rabbi Yosef in doubt? To the contrary, Vadi of it, and most definitely Rabbah did, like all his customs, like Rav. So for sure he did follow like Rav in this lenient interpretation of bathing. Why? Because Abaya said, Kol Mil Demar, all the customs of the master, which was Rabbah, whose house he grew up in, Ovid Karav. He always followed like Rav. Bar Mehani Tlas, except for the following three halachas. David Kishmul that he did like Shmuel, but everything else, including seemingly bathing, he did like Rav. What are the three things that he did like Shmuel? Were Matilim Mibeg Lebeg, which has the halacha lemaisa as we rule, that you're allowed to take tzitzis for one garment to another garment. And similar halacha, Madlikim and Neir L'Neir, you're allowed to light one Chanukah candle from the other candle. And the third halacha is Valacha Rabbi Shimon Begreira. We follow Rabbi Shimon by regarding Davashin and Meskavan, you're allowed to drag a chair, although it might create a malacha of chayrish, it's okay, since you're not intending to do that, as long as not psik reisha, you're allowed to go ahead and drag the chair. So what it means, and what was he questioning? Of course he did follow like Rav. We know everything he did like Rav besides those three things. It says, no, kachurmi de Rav of it. Besides these three stringencies, Rav followed the stringencies of Rav. But kekuli de Rav, regarding the leniencies of Rav, there are some that lo yavid that he didn't do. And this, regarding rechitza of bathing, is a lenient opinion of Rav. And that's why maybe Rabbah did not do like Rav, and that's what Rabbi Yosef's question was. He wanted to know what was the custom of Rabbah regarding this area of bathing, and that was the question that he asked to Abaya. Now we continue with the halachas of the prohibition of bathing on Shabbos. Talking about in the Bryce, which in this discussion is going to come to the halachic source of why is it a problem to even bathe on Shabbos. And again, this is one of the most complex sugis regarding what is permitted, what's not, a chayla, mikveh, hot water, cold water. It is a very complex sugi, but we're going to read it as the Gemara tells it to us. Talking about in the Bryce, merchat's a bathhouse, shepakaku nekav of me'erev Shabbos, where if its vents were closed from before Shabbos. Two interpretations in Rashi, we'll read them both, is that the vents were closed, that the heat should not, the exhaust vents, it shouldn't let out the heat. That was closed from before Shabbos. So it's containing the heat, but it was already heated from before Shabbos. But everything is closed off. L'matzah Shabbos reichitz by miyad. So matzah Shabbos, you could bathe in that bathhouse right away. I mean, you don't have to wait for what's called b'chtei sheyasa. Generally, when the malach is done on Shabbos, so you have to wait the amount of time that it would take to do the malacha on Shabbos. We don't want you to get any gain about a malacha that was done on Shabbos. Here, that it was done from before Shabbos, so everything was blocked off, so it can maintain its heat. Right after Shabbos, you can go ahead and use that bathhouse. Or another interpretation is actually no, which vents were closed? The vents which actually got heated through it, not the exhaust, but where it takes it in the heat, because the fire of the bathhouse was heated beneath the boards, and that was closed off, so it's not heating it on Shabbos. So then you could bathe in it right away on Matzah Shabbos because it wasn't heated on Shabbos. But on Shabbos itself, one is not allowed to bathe because at this point in time they already made the gzeira, the decree of bathing on Shabbos. Now, important to point out, the Tosfos says that this is specifically that you have to wait for Matzah Shabbos to bathe in it. But actually, you at this point in time, you're allowed to be mazia, to have a shvitz on Shabbos. And Tosfos actually says that Shabbos and Yom Tov here, although we interchange the cases, they're actually the same halacha. Tosfos discusses why we put into separate categories, but really it's the same thing, Shabbos and Yom Tov. So L'matzah Shabbos, which would be the same as L'matzah Yom Tov, Reichitz b'miyad, that's when you could bathe right after Shabbos and Yom Tov. Now, Paku Nukav Me'erev Yom Tov, which is the same case. And Tosfos discusses why we're switching here to Yom Tov, but it's the same thing. If you close off the vents from before Yom Tov, L'mocher nichnas umaziyah. So next day on Yom Tov, and the same thing says on Shabbos would be the same thing, you could go and you could steam bathe. So you can't bathe, but you could steam bathe. You could go to the shvitz. And v'yaitze, and you can go out and then you could wash yourself off in the outer room, meaning which is in front of the bathhouse, which essentially the halacha is telling you can't wash yourself off in the bathhouse itself, because we don't want people to say, oh, he was bathing himself, which we said this was already at the point in time that bathing was forbidden. But the shvitz, but that was actually permitted. Now, what did people do when they would go to the shvitz? You stand or you sit in the bathhouse, you don't put any water on you, you just sweat and you steam. That's called shvitzing. That is something that's permitted to be done on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, at least at this point in the halacha of the Brisa. So therefore, again, all we're saying over here is that there's no maris ayin over here, essentially, and that there's no Shabbos that was done. Since the vents were closed, nothing was done on Shabbos. So on Shabbos itself, or Yom Tov, you could go in and you could take a shvitz. Again, you can't actually go into the bath because you're not allowed to bathe on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And when you cool yourself off, when you put water on you, don't do it inside because then it looks like people are going to think you bathed. do that outside in front of the bathhouse to cool yourself off. So essentially, it's like a simple halacha the brisa. Now, Amar Yehuda, he just brings this ma'isa b'merchet shel b'nei barak. It's a story in the bathhouse of b'nei barak. Shepakaku nekav be'erev Yom Tov. They had closed up the vents from before Yom Tov, the same exact case. And l'machar nichnas Rabbi Elazar ben Nazai Rabbi Kiva. The next day on Yom Tov, Rabbi Elazar ben Nazai Rabbi Kiva, they went into the bathhouse and they were schwitzing. Yom Tov, take a nice schwitz. V'yatzu b'nishtatu. Then they went out. As we said, you can't wash yourself off in the bathhouse itself because then, since you're wet and you're sweating, it looks like you took a hot bath, which you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov. So they went out and they washed themselves off in the outer room. The only thing is, what's interesting about that bathhouse, that actually the hot waters were actually covered with boards. So obviously there's no concern that someone that went in a hot bath on Yom Tov because the boards were, the water were actually covered with boards. So when this story came in front of the sages, they said, to clarify, even if its hot waters are not covered with boards, it's still going to be permitted as long as the vents will close. So then we're not concerned to say that, people went and they bathed themselves inside the hot waters. We permitted, even if it's not covered with boards, as long as the vents will close and therefore wasn't heated on Shabbos or Yom Tov, a person is allowed to go ahead and schwitz himself, at least where the Bryce is holding in on historically regarding what was prohibited and permitted, that bathing was prohibited, schwitzing was still permitted, that you're allowed to go ahead, even if it wasn't like the Rebbe Elazar ben Nazai Mekiva had, even if it's not covered with boards, you're allowed to go in to the bathhouse and just sit there and schwitz and wash yourself afterwards. Now, this is where we get started regarding, so where did all the problems start? Meaning to say, with the Bryce, again, just to point out, we're going to talk about in a second historically how it evolved. But at this point in the Bryce, bathing is prohibited, but schwitzing is permitted. But the Bryce itself is going to mention that even that changed. When there was an increase of sinners, that's when they started prohibiting even zayah, even steam bathing. Meaning the Bryce is telling you halacha at a certain point in history, when bathing was already prohibited, which even that's not so simple. Why is bathing prohibited? Why can't you bathe on Shabbos? Bathing was prohibited, schwitzing was still permitted, and then the Bryce says, no, even that they ended up making prohibited because of the sinners, which the Gemara doesn't explain what happened that they had to go ahead and forbid schwitzing. What's wrong with schwitzing? Now, but the Bryce does point out an important exception. The big bathhouses, shalkrachen of cities, Matayil ben the person is allowed to go ahead and just walk through in his normal way through the bathhouse, not to sit and schwitz, just to walk through. Ve'enachesh is not concerned that maybe people are going to say, he's schwitzing, even though that at that point in time they already made it forbidden to sweat. For those who don't know Yiddish, schwitzing, sweating, that's not concerned. You could walk through; it's not a problem. Even though you might get a little steamy, that's okay. You're allowed to walk through as long as you're not sitting and schwitzing there and sitting there. Now, so the Gemara clarifies. My oivri aver. What is this that the Bryce referring to? That they said that we had to even make zayah, steam bathing, they had to make forbidden because of the sinners. Who were the sinners? What did they do? Why did we have to forbid even steam bathing? So the Gemara explains the Amr B'Shem Bazi, Amr B'Shem Alevi, B'Shem Bakapar, which goes through now the whole hishtalshel, this whole evolution about where did this whole halacha, which again is just complex halacha l'maisa. What are you allowed to do actually? Shabbos, Yom Tov, is there a difference? Bathing, showering, cold, hot, mikveh, nida, what do we permit and what would we not? But this is the primary corpus of what happened. So, b'tchil in the beginning, it's important to understand. They used to bathe with water that was heated from before Shabbos. Why not? Now, actually, in practice, we don't go in the pool. We don't do things like that because we're concerned about schita. That's concerned. Is there one's allowed to go mikveh or not? But why can't you go and warm yourself up? Why can't you bathe yourself with water that was heated from before Shabbos? There's no violation of any Shabbos issur. No, but this is where the problem started. But the bathhouse attendant started to heat up the water on Shabbos. What happens? You have customers. People are coming. So you're allowed to bathe in hot water. Why not? It was heated from before Shabbos. You're allowed to do something you're allowed to have the cholent cooked from before Shabbos. So that's not a problem. And you're allowed to go ahead and consume it. Why can't you go in the water? But then the bathhouse attendant started heating it up on Shabbos. They would say, me'erev Shabbos huchamu. It was heated from before Shabbos. That's a problem. They're doing bishul on Shabbos. So Asr Sachamin, that's when they started prohibiting, you can't use hot water to bathe yourself on Shabbos because it was all because of the bathhouse attendants. But V'tiras Hazeh, they permitted steam bathing because what's the problem with steam bathing? But the problem is that they were still bathing in hot water that was heated from before Shabbos. They were saying, Mezina nachnu, oh, we're just going for a shvitz. But the problem was that no, people were going into the hot waters because even though people see they're all sweaty, hey, why are you all wet? He says, no, we just went for a shvitz. But really they were going because people were so accustomed, so used to it, people couldn't stop their old habits, they were still bathing in the hot waters. So Aslan says, if the rabbis came along and they said, that's it, Zeya, schwitzing is forbidden because we can't let schwitzing. If we let schwitzing, people are going to still continue going into the bathing in the hot waters, which what's the problem with bathing in the hot waters is then the balonim are going to be heating it up the water, so that's it, no schwitzing. But but it was permitted because chametver is very different. It's naturally heated waters, so it has nothing to do with fire at all. So they continue permitting the hot waters of Tveria. But there was still a problem. Or people are still bathing in artificial, meaning in fire heated waters, which is the whole problem that they might heat up the waters on Shabbos. But they were saying, oh, we went to Tveri today and we went into the bathhouses and that's how we went and oh yeah, that's why we're all wet. So Aslan Chametz Tver, so that's it. The rabbi said that's it. No, forget it. You can't bathe in even Chametz Tver anymore because that's the loophole that lets them do in the regular bathhouses. But they did permit for them to go ahead and bathe themselves in cold water. This is the source that, on some level, that you are really allowed to bathe yourself in cold water again, but in practice we don't because of the problems about tzchita and so on. But that's what they permitted. But then they saw no. The tzibur, the public, they can't contain this because you're telling them that they can't heat themselves with any hot water. In Talmudic times, that was almost like impossible. They needed some of that sensory input of the hot water. So, and this is the halacha. I don't know if people actually do this in practice, but this is the primary halacha, that they permitted them to bathe in the hot waters of Tveria. So if there's someone here watching on the shiur in Tveria, it would seem like, but I don't know from practice that this is actually done, they permitted them to warm themselves up in the hot waters of Tveria. But, and this is also the halacha of Zeibim Kaimei Medes, but the prohibition of steam bathing maintained, you're not allowed to go for a shvitz on Yom Tov. So, because Chametz Tver wasn't tolerable, so this is bathing in the way it goes is Chametz Tver is they although they really wanted to make it aser, because if you go Chametz Tver you might go to Chameor, but they saw people couldn't contain it. Oh, you have to give them somewhere to go to wash themselves in hot water. So Chametz Tver is mutter, but steam bathing is aser, and that's of a regular bath is definitely aser, and this is all because of the balanim who were heating it up on Shabbos. And they were saying it was heated from before Shabbos, so we had to make the bathing forbidden, and then Zay, because they might say that they were bathing, and then Mechamet Tver, even that they wanted to make Aser, but that they didn't do. Now, parenthetically, the Gemara points out, Amar Rava, he says, from what we just mentioned before, he says, Haiman de Avad Rabbanim, whoever violates even just rabbinic law, Shari lemikri le'avaryani, you're allowed to call him a sinner. Come on, who's that like? So it says the Gemara, that's Kihai Tanam. That's like the following Tanam, which we mentioned just before. He said in the words of the Brisa, which we went to clarify the whole evolution of why bathing was forbidden in the first place. He said, "Misheschilu oivre avera." He says when they started being sinners, forget it. Then they started even forbidding steam bathing, because at one point we said Rebbe Elazar ben Azari, Rebbe Kiva, that was at the time when only bathing was forbidden, but steam bathing was permitted, and that's why they said that you're allowed to go in and schwitz on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But then we said that even that they immediately started making forbidden because of the sinners. Now, what was the sinners? What did they do wrong? All they did was that they washed themselves, the water was heated from before Shabbos. They were using the Chametz Chochmah B'Erev Shabbos, and they were saying, oh, we were steam bathing. That violation of bathing in water that was heated from before Shabbos is only rabbinic prohibition. What's wrong with bathing in water that was heated from before Shabbos? There's nothing wrong. It's just because the Balonim started heating up on Shabbos, the rabbi said, that's it, you can't bathe yourself with waters even that was heated up from before Shabbos. But you're allowed to steam bathe. But then people started still bathing, and they were saying, oh, we really want, we're dripping and we're hot, is because we were schwitzing. So, and still we call them Oivri Avera. You see that even if you violate just rabbinic law, you could call someone an Avarian, you could call someone a sinner. Now, we had said in the Brisa, Amvatia Shal Kracham, that, but regarding the large city bathhouses, Matayel ben, you're allowed to walk through it, you don't have to be concerned. Although they said steam bathing is forbidden, but you're allowed to walk through a hot schwitz if it's a huge open room. And Amar Rava, he points out, Dafka Krachan, specifically the bathhouses of the cities. of the kfar, but if it's that of a village, lo, you're not allowed to my tama. Why? Keeping the zutrin, since it's small, nafesh havlayu has a lot of heat, and automatically you're going to schwitz, and therefore that's like you coming to schwitz. But a large one, when you're just walking through, that would be permitted. Now, turn to the brisa, continuing on a related discussion regarding the prohibition about bathing, and then many halachas that what's called keneged hamadura, that near a fire. So mischam adam keneged hamadura, a person could heat himself, he could sit near a fire, and then he could go and rinse with cold water, which we're not concerned that he's so hot that he's going to be heating up the water. Now, but as long as he doesn't do the opposite, as long as he doesn't wash himself off with cold water, and then he'll do the opposite, and then he'll go, after he washes himself with cold water, then he'll go and sit opposite the fire. Why? Because if you'll do that, which there's two interpretations over here. Rashi says, because although it's using the word mavshir, which generally means like lukewarm, Rashi says it means to say you're going to be heating up the mayim shalav, the water that's on him, and and since you're going to be heating up the water, so therefore that's going to be like bathing. Now, Taisus, because he reads the word mavshir literally, he has a difficulty because we find throughout this whole sugya that if it's actually lahavshir, if it's just to make it lukewarm, that's actually permitted, because hafshara loizeu bishulei, just making something lukewarm is not cooking it. So why over here are we saying it's asa? So the Riva explains, so according to Rashi, you could read it literally, it would be a problem about bishul. The way Taitzis says is because, and this is the halacha l'maisa, because it's like, it would be like bathing with warm water, which you might come to heat up water to wash your whole body. So therefore, just like the Isra we said of Rechitza, here also you're not allowed to go and wash up even with cold water and sit by the hot water, because that would be like bathing with warm water. Because you have I think I've said that my father had someone he knew that used to drink coffee, and a few hours later take some sugar and jump up and down, and that way get coffee. So this person's also doing some type of like a bath like that. Go into the cold water, then sit by the fire and get heated up like a warm bath. So according to Taisus, it's a problem about rechitza. According to Rashi, you could even say it's a problem about bishul, because it's like heating it up. You'd be cooking the water that's on your body. Now, related discussion. Talking about in the brisa, meichem adam aluntis. A person could warm up, like Rashi says, a tola, a towel, which is a garment that you dry yourself up with. So you could heat up this towel, and you could put it on your intestines on Shabbos, on your stomach, meaning if you have a stomach ache, so you could heat up some type of a vessel or a garment, and you could put it on your stomach, and it helps, it's therapeutic, and you could put it on your stomach on Shabbos. Now, that is not so, like Taisa says, not so obvious that it's for refuah, which now I'll do refuah on Shabbos, but it's not so obvious, so you'll put the hot towel on your stomach. As long as you don't bring a hot kettle of hot water, and put it on your stomach on Shabbos. Where Rashi says the reason is because the hot water might spill on him, and it comes out that he does rechitza, he's bathing himself with hot water on Shabbos, which is forbidden. Taisa says that no, it's actually referring to you now bring the hot water kettle if you have the towel on your stomach, which was the previous halacha, because then the hot water might spill on the towel and it might come to schita, might come to squeeze out, to wring out the towel. Or another interpretation, Taisa says no, you now bring the hot kettle because of refuah, and you're not allowed to do anything that's refuah because you might come to grind the herbs on Shabbos, which what's with the towel is also refuah. But that's what they says. It's not so obvious, the towel. Well, but because the towel, people use towels, and even though it's hot, it's not so evident. Here, it's like, why are you putting a kettle on your stomach? Oh, it's like some type of refuah. That's going to be asur to do. Now, says the Brisa even more than that. V'davar zeh, this thing about putting a kettle on your stomach with hot water, afilu b'chayla, it's not only problematic on Shabbos, but even on the weekday. Well, you'll do things that are dangerous, and sometimes you might have scalding water, and you put it on the stomach, it might spill, chas v'shalom, person can get burnt, and therefore that's forbidden to be done even during the weekday. Now, a related halacha regarding this keneged hamadur, to do things opposite near a fire. So time on learn the Bryce, and this halacha lamaisa. Maybe adam kitun mayim. A person is allowed to bring. There's discussions in the Mishnah Berurah exactly how much and regarding what, but the primary halacha is correct. Maybe adam kitun mayim. A person could bring a flask of water. Umanichi keneged hamadura, and they can put it near a fire. Now, says the Tam Kama, it's not to go ahead and leave it there until it gets heated up. And it's just that you want to leave it to take out the chill from it. That you're allowed to do. You're allowed to put the water near the fire. That's the opinion of the Tam Kama. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, he says, he doesn't discuss water. He says, a woman could bring pakshal shemen, a flask of oil, and she's allowed to put it near the fire. Now, he also explains, not to go ahead and to leave it there so that the oil should cook, which that's what's called yatzel edesboy, the boiling point, which is forbidden, which would go stringent either way, depending which direction is going to be a stringency. Let's say 112 degrees Fahrenheit or 200, depends if you're going, one way could be a leniency, one way is stringency, and I'll make it that's going to cook. But el b'shul sheifasher, we mean to say allowed to put the oil just enough that it gets let's say room temperature, or that it just becomes somewhere in the middle, lukewarm. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So you're allowed to warm it, not heat it up. You're allowed to warm it near a fire. Now Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he says no. He says actually you're not allowed to warm oil near a fire. All he says, and we're going to explain shortly this three machlekes. He says isha sacha yad Hashem. The woman, what she could do is she could smear oil on her hand. This is a very indirect way, and therefore he permits it. She could then heat it up with her hand near the fire, and then she could use the warmed oil to smear on her son. Then she doesn't have to be concerned for bishul in that way. But regarding taking the flask of oil itself to defrost it near the fire, that is the normal way how it's done during the weekday. That he disagrees with. He says, no, that would be forbidden. That you can't do. What you could do is this indirect type of a way. Now, because the Gemara now says, to explain the machlekes, the following question. Shemen, regarding oil, mahu l'tanakama. The Tanakama only discussed water. He says water you're allowed to do to make it warm, but not to heat it up, not to get it to its boiling point. What would he hold regarding oil? How come he doesn't discuss oil? The next opinion, Rabbi Yehuda essentially says the same thing as the Tanakama, but he says regarding oil, and then the Tanakama only says it regarding water. What would he hold? So it's a machlekes. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damatavai, they both say that he would hold the hetera, actually would be more lenient than Rabbi Yehuda, whereas Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak he says no, the Yisur, the Tanakam would say that it's prohibited. So the Gemara explains the machlekes. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damatavai le'hetera, they both say that the Tanakama, what Rabbi Yehuda said is forbidden to cook the oil. Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to defrost the oil, you're allowed to make it room temperature, but you're not allowed to go ahead and heat it up. What Rabbi Yehuda says is forbidden by oil, which to cook it, to heat it up to its boiling point, that the Tanakama says is going to be permitted. So when the Tanakama spoke about water, that loy sheichama, they not heat it up, because by water there is halach of bishul, there's a problem about cooking water, but by oil, he held no, even if it's yatzel edesboy, even if it gets heated to its boiling point, which according to Yehuda, that's a problem about bishul, Tanakama said that's going to be permitted. Why? So the Gemara explained. Shemen by oil, even if it's so hot that the hand draws back from fear about getting burnt. When you touch something very hot, you jump back. That's the instincts Hashem put into a person. That's called yatzel edesboy, but the hand pulls back from it. Mutter is permitted by oil to heat it up. Why? Tanakama held shemen ein by mishum bishul. Interesting concept. He says oil doesn't have a halachic problem about bishul, about cooking. Why? Because the whole element of bishul is that it changed its properties from when it was not heated up to when it is heated up, which that's the actual concept about bishul, which it could even be by something like metal. But by oil, he said nothing changes. The properties don't change. There's no bishul about oil. Even if you bring it to its boiling point, you didn't do anything wrong. So therefore, he holds you allowed to cook oil on Shabbos. Now, on that, Rabbi Yehuda came to say, no, shemen yesh b'mishum bishul. No, that there is bishul on oil, but ve'hav sheri lo zehu bishulay. But so although that there's cooking for oil, but when you heat it up, that's not cooking it. Therefore, as long as you didn't do it that it should be cooked, rather you only did it that it should be warmed up, so that's going to be permitted because you didn't bring it to its boiling point. You didn't cook it. Warming oil is not considered bishul. Heating it is considered bishul. So that's why he says that you're allowed to bring it near there, have share. On that verse, that the third opinion, Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg came to say, no, shemen yesh b'mishum bishul. There is a problem about bishul on oil, and moreover, he has actually holds that oil is more stringent. Ve'hav sheri zeh b'shulay. Just warming up the oil, and essentially you see by everyone that seems like oil is different because it really doesn't change. So in a way that could be a stringency, you say, okay, so you're even allowed to heat up to its boiling point. Another one says no. Therefore, even just warming it up is essentially its cooking. So therefore, the way you do it during the week, you can't do it. Rather, you have to do what's called k'lach hayad, an indirect way, through a change, which is the woman goes and smears it on her hand, and then she goes near the fire, and then she can warm it up that way. That's the three machlekes regarding what's the halacha regarding oil. Now, that's one interpretation where the Tanakama is more lenient. Rav Nachman Yitzchak he actually says that the Tanakama would hold more stringent than Rabbi Yehuda regarding oil, because only water is permitted lahavshir to just warm it up. But oil, he would hold no, you can't even just warm it up, Because he holds efsher zeh b'shulai. Even just warming up the oil is considered as cooking, says the Gemara explains. He holds shemen regarding oil, even if it's not coming to its boiling point, usher, it would be prohibited to leave the oil near the fire. Because he holds shemen yesh b'mishum bishul. Tanakama he holds is more stringent, that there is a problem about cooking on oil, and more of efsher zeh b'shulai. Warming it up is its cooking. On that, Rabbi Shloimy really came to be more lenient, and he says, no, hefsher lo zeh b'shulai. Just warming it up is not its cooking. Yes, you cannot bring it to its boiling point, but you're allowed to warm it near a fire. That's not considered bishul. On that, the third opinion, Rabbi Shloimy came to say, no, shemen yesh b'mishum bishul. There is a problem about bishul, which according to this version, everyone holds there's a problem about cooking on oil. But vevsher is b'shulai. But warming it up is it's cooking, and therefore you can't even bring the flask of oil near the fire. The woman would have to smear it on her hand and come nearby. So it says, wait, it's the same thing. Both of them in this version are saying that you're not allowed to even just warm up the oil near the fire. So what's this opinion number one and opinion number three? Says the difference between them is kalachiyat in an indirect way. Where Shimon holds that that's going to be permitted. Tanakam will hold even through a shin, even through a change, it's forbidden. No, you're not allowed to even just warm up the oil. That's a difference between him and Shimon Gamliel. Now, la halacha, the Gemara says, and this is the halacha, Amar B'Yehuda Mishmul, echad shemen, whether we're talking about oil, ve'echad mayim, whether we're talking about oil, the halacha is yatzeh ledus by asim. If you're heating it to what we call its boiling point, which the hand would recoil when you touch it, that's prohibited to put it near the fire. Ein yatzeh ledus by mutter, but if it's not going to be heated up to that point, which again in the Psak Halacha is discussed, does that mean if you would leave it that long or in a place that it could get that hot? But be that as it may, but if it's not going to be yatzeh ledus by, that would be permitted. Now, now, what does it mean the hand recoils? It means to say you have some people that's like my son who he can put his hand in fire and nothing happens and he's not going to pull his hand back. And then you have some people that are a little bit digging, they pull their hand back. How could you qualify yatzeh ledus by? Every person is different. So the Gemara, Amar Achava, it's kosher kreisa shel tenik nichvas. It's whenever the stomach of a child would get burnt, where the child is more sensitive skin, that's how we qualify, would be considered the mean of a regular person that would be yad nichvas, but that is how to recoil, it's when the stomach of a baby would get burnt. Now the Gemara brings a story that discusses some interesting halachas that come up regarding this discussion that we were having of the oil, of warming it up, of the bathhouse, of bathing, brings it together with a lot of the halachas that we talk about in the following story. Says Pamachas nechnasti. Says one time on Shabbos, I went achar Rabbi lebeis hamerchatz, after my teacher after Rabbi into the bathhouse. Now, this was by Chamei Tiveria, which, as we said before, were not prohibited. They left the permissibility even after the Gzer of Merchatz, even though we're not allowed to bathe on Shabbos. What was still left permitted was the Chamei Tiveria, was the hot waters of Tiveria. So on Shabbos, he went after Rabbi into the bathhouse of Tiveria. He says, and I wanted to put a flask of oil in the bath, which is these type of pools that are made in the ground where the water gathers over there. So he says, why did I want to put a flask of oil over there? Because I wanted to just warm up the oil that he could smear himself before he goes or after he bathes. But he wanted to use the oil, which they would use it as a part of their bathing process. It softens up the skin. I wanted to put in the flask of oil to just warm up. V'amali, and he said to me, Tul, take from the water, which are the hot waters, from the bath, the klisheni. Take with it in what's called a secondary vessel. What does that mean? What's a klisheni? The klisheni is, the bathhouse itself is a kli rishon. Take a different vessel, which that when you put it into klisheni, which we're going to shortly explain, cools off the water a little bit, because this is the primary halacha, what we call klisheni, a secondary vessel doesn't cook anymore. So take the waters in the klisheni, and then then put the flask of oil inside that secondary vessel, what we call a klisheni. Now the reason why is because that bath, that the hot waters of Tiveria were drawing from the springs of Tiveria into that bath, that's considered like a kli rishon. What's a kli rishon? A kli rishon is the primary vessel that was heated on the fire, which, although this is not on the hot source, the hot springs itself, because this is actually a runoff of the hot springs of Tiveria into this bathhouse that they made, which they had a pool of the water, but even though it was removed, quote, from the fire, the Gemara later on in the Daf Bezim and Alf tells us it still cooks. If you have a frying pan or a pot that was removed from the fire, it's still considered kli rishon. You're not allowed to put spices into that pot. So though it's not on the fire, but it's still a kli rishon. It's the pot itself that was heated on the fire. It still has the halachic status as a kli rishon and still could cook. So here also quote this bathhouse in Tveria, although it wasn't on the springs itself, but that's still considered kli rishon. So he says, don't warm up the oil in the bath itself. Take a bowl, dip it into the bath, and now put the flask of oil in there. That's a kli sheni. That's not going to cook anymore. Says the Gemara, Shmamino Tlas. We learned 3 interesting halachas from this, what his directive, what he told his student. Shmamino, first of all, we learn, Shemen yesh b'mishum bishul. We just had a whole discussion, is there bishul by shemen or not? From this story, we see that Rebbe rules explicitly that there is a problem about cooking of the oil. Because if it wasn't, who cares if you put it into a kli rishon? There's no problem about cooking of yatzeh ladis by even, by oil. So number 1 is we see that there is a issa bishul on oil. Number 2, B'Shmamin, and this is the halacha l'maisa, a very important one, is klishein ein mavashal. Again, there are exceptions to this, as we'll see throughout this masechta, but essentially in the primary halacha, we call a secondary vessel doesn't cook anymore. That's why he told them, take the water into a bowl. It'll be a klisheni. Then you'll be able to, although there's a problem about bishul on the oil, it's not going to be cooking anymore because it's a klisheni. Now, this is from the classic Taisus, and Taisus says, I don't get this. Why is a klisheni different than a kli rishon? If the water is boiling, so even the klisheni should be a problem about bishul. And many people have this question of Taisus. I don't get what, because I put in a second cup, not going to cook? What's going on? And if the water's not boiling, then even the kli rishon should not be a problem about bishul. Says Taisus, one of the classic understandings from the primary elements of bishul, says a kli rishon, since the pot itself was on the fire, its walls are hot, so it retains the heat for a long time. So therefore, they gave the shiur, as long as the water is boiling, is going to be asa. But a kli sheni, even if the water is boiling, now there's something called yad nichves by Chazon Ish, they want to say it's going to be forbidden, but essentially regular boiling water is going to be permitted because the walls of that vessel were never on the fire. It's not hot. It's going to cool down right away. So even if the water is boiling, the walls of that secondary vessel are going to be taking away from that heat. It's not going to hold it together, and therefore that's why you're allowed to cook something, which you're not cooking in halacha, because it's not going to be mevashel in a kli sheni. Moreover, a third thing we learn is have sheiroi, to just warm something up where it could cook, zehu bishulai, that is cooking it. Because here we see by the oil that all he wanted to do was to warm it up, and still he said that to warm the oil is considered to be cooking according to Rebbe, which is like we had this whole debate. Okay, so we said this bishul by oil, but is that only cooking it to its boiling point, or even to just warming it up? We see that he held that even just warming it up is going to be considered as bishul. So that's 3 halachas that you learn. But the Gemara now actually learns that other things. How did Rebbe do this? That he taught a psak halacha, which is biblical, which is divrei Torah, in the bathhouse, because he was saying, no, don't do this. He's telling him halacha. He's saying they're in the bathhouse, and he says, no, don't put in there, put into kli sheni. How could he do this? But and he says, and this is the halacha l'maisa, b'chol makom muter lahar. In any place a person is permitted to think in divrei Torah, which a person should think in words of Torah, except for a bathhouse. In the bathroom, one is not allowed to think in words of Torah. What does one do in the bathroom then? Make a cheshbon nefesh. Make a calculation, what are you doing on this planet? But thinking words of Torah, you're not supposed to. Now, so you see, you're not allowed to even think in words of Torah. How could you say that he was teaching him halach in the bathhouse? Now, maybe you're going to say, not a problem. But he's told him in the secular language, in whatever the language was, not in English, but some other language, he said it to him, so therefore he wasn't talking Lashon Kodesh, which takes actually an interesting question. He says, well, how would that help that he said to him a different language? He was thinking the words of Torah. if he said it, you were thinking, and I'll be even mahar. So Taisa says, and I don't know if the halacha l'mais is like this, he says, I don't think it's like this, he says that maybe you're not thinking words of Torah only Lashon Kodesh. He was thinking in a secular language. So maybe by speaking, you're not allowed to say words of Torah even in the other language, but thinking. But be that as it may, says if you're going to say he said it to him in a different language, but that's also not an option, because Abaye says, and this is the halacha, dvarim shel chayil, things that are mundane matters, mutar laham b'lashon kodesh. You're allowed to say in the bathhouse, even in the holy tongue, you're allowed to use lashon kodesh to speak in the bathhouse, if you're talking about regular mundane things. Now, shel kodesh, if you're speaking divrei Torah, asur la'amrin, you're not allowed to say it in a filthy place like a bathhouse, even b'lashon chol. So even if you're speaking English or French or whatever language you're speaking, Yiddish, it's going to be forbidden to say divrei Torah. So how did he tell him a dvar Torah in the bathhouse? So the Gemara, Frushim Isur Shani. And this is not Loch Lamaisa. If you want to stop someone from doing a prohibition, an Aveira, a sin, that you're allowed to say a Devar Torah in the bathhouse. And the Gemara says, Tate, I'll prove this to you. You should know this. Because Dam Rabbi Yehuda Mishmol says, Maisim Tamid Shel Remeir. There was a story with the student of Remeir. Shenichnas Achav LeBeis HaMerchatz. Here also he went after his Rebbe into the bathhouse, which, although you're generally not supposed to go after your Rebbe in the bathhouse, but if it's to attend him, then you're allowed to. Ubikush Ladich Karka. And he wanted to wash the ground because his Rebbe is going there. He wanted to make it not filthy. But said to him, no, Eima Dichin. We don't wash the bathhouse floor on Shabbos because you might come to then smooth out the bumps in the ground, which is a problem about Baina. So okay, Losach Lekarka. He wanted to at least smear the ground that it should be clean for his Rebbe. So Amalai says, no, Ein Sachin, you don't smear it either, again, for the same reason, because you might come to find a bump, you might come to smooth it out, therefore that's problematic. But one thing says the Gemara, Al Nafrushim Yisur, we see that the Rebbe told him, no, you can't do this, you can't do this, because he wanted to stop him from doing Naveira. Hachanam Hiros Lafrushim Yisur Shani, to stop someone from doing Naveira, that's different, that you're allowed to. That was the fourth halacha we learned from this story, that it's actually, this is the fifth one. We'll go back to the fourth one in a second. That one may pass in the halacha in the bathhouse if it's lafrush meisura. Now, another limud we learn from this story, so there's 5 things, is that Amar Avini says, Shema Mina, another thing we learn from this is, if someone cooks, even in naturally heated springs, which are what Chamei Tveria was, as we said, this must have been the Chamei Tveria, because this was already after the Gzeira, is going to be chayiv for cooking in even naturally heated waters, which we had discussed this in the previous daf regarding what's the halachic status of a naturally heated source. The Ma'aseh of the Rebbe, because the story of Rebbe, lach Gzeira hava. It's after the Gzeira, where they already made a decree that you can't even steam bathe. Now, so obviously it must have been the Chamei Tveria, because Rabbi Shub ben Levi, who said this teaching previously of the Gzeira, he was in the days of Rebbe. So obviously in the days of Rebbe, the Gzeira already was, that you can't bathe and you can't even steam bathe. So what was the story of Rebbe going into the bath? Must have been Chamei Tveria. And Ba'amalei, what did he tell him? Tulba Klishen Yivaten. Put into a secondary vessel and then put in. But in Kli we should know, obviously, because there's a problem about Bishul, with even naturally heated waters of Chamei Tveria. But in that says the Gemara, Ini, is that really so? But because he says, someone cooks with the naturally heated waters of Tveria on Shabbos, he's pater because it's told us Chama. It's a derivative from something is a natural heat source, like the sun or the springs, where it has to be, like we said, told us or. It can't be the biblical violation. It can't be chayiv. It might be rabbinically problematic because you might come to confuse told us chama, told us or. But the biblical violation is only when it's coming from a heat source of fire. How could you say someone would be chayiv, which sounds like that you're liable for a biblical violation? Says, well, no, my chayiv not to come. You're right. What do you mean when you say you're liable? It means that the kamar, that means to say makas mardas. It means the rabbinic, for being rebellious regarding rabbinic law, that we're allowed to give lashes. That's only asam d'rabbanan. That's not regarding any issa d'oraisa. Now, the final story that the Gemara brings tells us regarding a halacha related to bathing. Of what type of bathing? Of swimming, of going swimming in the swimming pool. So Amar Bezeri says, "Anoch chazita Rebbe Vo." He says, "I saw Rebbe Vo, the shot be'amvati." Says, "I saw that he was floating in the bathtub on Shabbos." Which is essentially like floating in the pool. The Leidan says, I don't know, akar, did he lift up his feet from the ground? Which that would be swimming. Now, although the Mishnah teaches in Masechtas Bay that you're not allowed to swim on Shabbos, he didn't know, maybe that's only by a large river. Why? Why by a large river can you not swim? The Gemara tells us over there, one of the interpretations is because you might come to make a lifeboat. You might come to make what's called a chavis, a barrel of shayat, of those who swim, which they make like something of a life preserver, which that would be a violation of Malachat Shabbos to make that. So therefore the Gemara says you're not allowed to go swimming in the first place. Like many laws, they said you're not allowed to ride a horse, you're not allowed to play an instrument because you might come to do something. Here's you're not allowed to swim on Shabbos because you might come to make a preserver. But that's only in the river. But in a bathtub, that maybe that's not a problem. So it says, I don't know, did he lift up his feet and therefore he was swimming, floating? Or did he not lift up his feet because he held that it's problematic? So the Gemara asked, Pshita de loyakar. What do you mean? Obviously, he did not lift up his feet. No, you're not allowed to go swimming even in a bathtub on Shabbos, because the Tanya learned in the Brisa, even if it's cold water, a person is not allowed to float in a pool that's malay mayim, that's filled with water, even though there's no reason to make a gzeira, because you're not making any life preserver in the bathtub. Only little kids that maybe they'll put on some type of pool stuff in the bathtub, but there's no real problem about doing that. It's aser. And even if the bathtub is in a courtyard, Why? What's relevant to that is that because there is another problem that you might make for a pool is that if it's near a Rishus Harabim, we're concerned that you might spray the water. Everyone's having fun frolicking in the pool, and then the water is going to spray into Rishus Harabim. That's going to be a problem by Haitzah. So even if it's in the courtyard where there's no concern that you might spray with your feet out of Arba Amas into Rishus Harabim, even then it's forbidden. So you see, it's always forbidden. So what's his suffix? You see in the Brisa clearly that you're not allowed to go ahead and swim in a pool. So it's not difficult because this that we see in the Brisa that's forbidden is the les le gedude. That was talking about that there's what's called no embankment. Means to say that there's no a large wall surrounding the pool, that to have that the water should be deep, even at the edge, like it is in the middle of the pool. Rather, since it's not deep at the edge, so when you get to the edge of the pool, and in Talmudic times, it was made out of earth. It was like the pool you made like was a ditch in the ground. So you stick your feet into the ground, and you like dig in to get out of the pool. So then you're mixing the earth into the water, and Rashi says that's similar to magabel, to kneading, which is a talad of lush. You're like kneading it because you're getting out of the pool, and because that's how you get out, because it gets narrower and narrower as you get to the edge. So that's where the Brisa said, so you're not allowed to go swimming in the pool, even if it's in your yard, because again, this is Rashi interpretation, there's many pshatim in the Piskei Halacha, but that's where he says that's where we say it's forbidden. So although it's not going to, let's say, be haitzah, go out into the street, and you're not going to make any life preservers, it doesn't make a difference. When you're getting out, you're going to do something like, it's like magabel, that's where it's prohibited. But the story about Rebbe Vo, where he was in doubt, he says maybe he was floating in the water, is the Isle Gedude, where there is an embankment, which means to say that you don't get out by walking out, you have to like jump over the wall, so then there's no magabel over there, and therefore that's what's permitted. Rashi gives a different interpretation and says, no, the reason why if there's an embankment, like this big wall, that would be permitted, because then it's not similar to a river. It's more like a kli, like a pool, and therefore there's no reason to make it usher. When there's no gedude, so it looks like a river, which was the primary isser, because you might come to make a life preserver in the river, because you might just float out into sea. So that's where we said that it's usher, and therefore that was his shaila. He didn't know, did he pick up his feet or not? How could you say pick up his feet? I would say no, but a lot of float in the pool. No, that's a pool that doesn't have a gedude, it doesn't have an embankment. If it does have an embankment, maybe it would be permitted, because then you don't have this even being doim l'magabel, and therefore that was his shaila. He didn't know what was it that he did regarding the swimming in the pool. Did he do that or not? Some of this we spoke about in today's daf, in Shabbos Daf Mem, we continued the discussion from the previous daf. We said that regarding waters that we heat up even from before Shabbos, we said that you're not allowed to bathe in on Shabbos. But then we had a machlekes Rav and Shmuel regarding, so what are you allowed to do with the hot waters? Shmuel says only your face, your hands, and your feet, which is the halacha. Rav, we had two versions of Rav. We had either that he says, no, you're allowed to do your whole body, but it has to be limb by limb. And the second version was, yes, you're allowed to do kol gufa, but you have to leave over one limb. Now, the problem is we had these brises that said only panav yod b'raglav. So that we said, no, it means ke'ein panav b'raglav. It means like the face and the feet, which is one by one. Problem is we had one brise that says clear like Shmuel, and the second version for sure is refuted, because here you cannot even say ke'ein panim raglo, because he says you actually could do kol gufay literally. All you have to do is leave over one limb, and that's not ke'ein panim raglo, and therefore that second interpretation is for sure refuted. Now, Rabbi Yosef asked Abaya, what did Rabbi do? Did he do like Rav? What do you mean did he do like Rav? He was refuted because he didn't hear the refutation. So then why are you thinking that he didn't do like Rav? Everything he did was like Rav. No, he only did like the chumras of Rav. Again, as we said, except those three that he followed like Shmuel, which is you could take the tzitzis from beged to beged, and you could do greira on Shabbos, you could light the nearest one from the other. But that's why he was in doubt. He didn't know, did Rabbah follow like Rav in this leniency about bathing on Shabbos with the hot water that was heated from before Shabbos. Then we mentioned a brisa regarding a bathhouse that the exhaust or the intake pipes were stuffed up. So there's no problem, but let's say that it was heat on Shabbos. So you're allowed to schwitz, at least at that point in history where they had made the gizera of rechitza. So you're not allowed to bathe, you're not allowed to actually bathe on Shabbos, but Matzah Shabbos or Matzah Yom Tov you could go right away. And the schwitzing was permitted on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But then the Brisa said, Mishra Rabba Oivri Aveira. Now who were the Oivri Aveira? that we're calling them avaryan. Oh, you could call them avaryan even on the rabbinic. Why? What happened? So the way it worked was like this. Really, a lot of bathe in hot water on Shabbos. The problem is the bathhouse attendant started heating up the water on Shabbos, so they says, that's it, forget it. We can't let you bathe in hot water because then they're going to come to heat it up. But then, it's okay. Problem is, people are still bathing. They says, oh, you know why we're hot and we're wet? Because we were steam bathing. Oh, so then they said that even the steam bathing is prohibited. So because of the Oivri Aveira, that were warming themselves up with water that was heated from before Shabbos, which is only rabbinic Isser, because really allowed to, it's only because of the Balanim that they made it Usser, so they made the Zeya prohibited. Now, but then still you were able to heat yourself up with Chamei Tveria because that's natural springs, and what would be the problem with that? You're no coming to heat up the Chamei Tveria, it's natural. So, but then the problem is that no, they were still warming themselves up with fire heated waters, and they were saying that we went to the Chamei Tveria. So then they said even Chamei Tveria is also. But then ultimately they permitted it because people couldn't contain it. They had to have some type of source of hot water. So then they permitted Chamei Tveria, but the schwitzing, that still remained also. So one is not allowed to steam bathe, and one is not allowed to go ahead and warm with any hot water. Those are forbidden with the Isra of the Gzeira of Rechitza. But there are certain leniencies, as we see that really it's not really intrinsically problematic. It's only because of a Gzeira that comes to something in there. But that's the complex halachas lamaises of Rechitza. Then related, we had these Keneged Amadura, which came into the discussion regarding Rechitza, that we said that a person's allowed to go ahead and go near a hot fire and then go into cold water, but he's not allowed to go ahead and wash himself with cold water and then heat himself up, because either he might be cooking the water that's on him, or like Taisa says, because that's like Rechitza, you're going to have water on you and it's going to get heated up, so like it's like warming with hot water, and because the Gemara says you're warming the water that's on you. We had three different opinions regarding placing things specifically of shemen opposite the madura. Now, there was a machlekes in the opinion of the Tanna Kama, because all he spoke about was water, that you're allowed to do with lahavshir, but not lechamen. But what's with oil? Because Rabbi Huda says oil is specifically lahavshir, only to warm it up and not to heat it up. So and Rabbi Shloimy says no, even warming it up is a problem, because he says by oil that is bishula. What does the Tanna Kama hold? So we have a machlekes. One opinion says that the Tanna Kama is more lenient. And he holds, no, even Yad Tziledis, but even at its boiling point, you're allowed to put the oil. Only water you're not allowed to do boiling point, because that there is a problem bishul. Oil doesn't change the properties, there's no bishul, even Yad Tziledis. The other opinion says, no, he's more stringent. He holds, have sheri zehu bishulai. So what's the difference between him and Reb Shimon Gamliel? Is kol achar yad, that Reb Shimon Gamliel says you're allowed to, and the Tanna Kama says you're not allowed to, and the most stringent, according to that interpretation, is the Tanna Kama. La halacha, the Gemara tells us, is that both of them, of water and oil, would depend if it's yad tziledis bay. What does it mean? The hand recoils. If the stomach of a child will get burned, that's the halacha by both water and oil. Then we spoke about a story with a bathhouse, which was that of Chamei Tveria, because it was after the Gzeira of Rechitza already. That for a flask of oil, he says, put in the kli sheni. Why? So we learned three halachas. First of all, that shemen has a problem b'bishul. Second of all, is that kli sheni is not mavashal. Therefore, he said put in the kli sheni. And third of all, that because even just warming it up, which is all he wanted to do, is bishula of the oil. Additionally, we learned a fourth halacha is that one is permitted to think and to teach a halacha in the bathhouse if it's lafrusha misura, if it's to separate someone from a sin. And we ended off with someone was swimming in a bathtub. So you didn't know, did he actually swim? Did he lift up his feet? Or did he not lift up his feet? Now, why would you not be able to lift up your feet? Because, even in a pool we say that you're not allowed to, even though it's in the chutzner, and even though there's no problem about making a life jacket or whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. We say it's forbidden. Or no, maybe he did lift up his feet, because there's no problem about a bathtub of making a preserver. And moreover, what's with this brisa? No, because the story was talking about that there was gidude, there was a wall. So therefore, either like Rashi says, because that's similar to a kli, or because you're not going to come to do megabel, because there's no end that that you're walking up. It's like you have to it's just straight up, it's vertical. The end. Therefore, now he wasn't sure what he did regarding swimming. So that's what he saw by Ravo, but he wasn't sure did he lift up his feet or did he not lift the besit? Thank you to Anytime for hosting us.